What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I wanted to just have a fun little conversation of speculation, discussion of what could Insomniac's third game, what that multiplayer game could be. This has always fascinated me. This is one of my most favorite things, I guess, to talk about when it comes to Insomniac, maybe more than Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine, just because, of the mystery on it, right? So, we know they're a gigantic team, one of the most talented, if not the most talented in the industry, and capable of having multiple teams put out game of the year like quality games just nonstop. I mean, they're one of the most consistent studios that is out there, not just from Sony. And obviously, we have this third game that we don't know anything about besides that it fundamentally is a multiplayer game, right? It seems completely built off the back that you're going to be able to play this with people in some capacity. And the question is, well, what I guess property, really, because we know the kind of game, multiplayer, but we don't know, I guess it could be a shooter, it could be action-adventure, it could be, platform. I mean, I guess there's different ways it can go, and what franchise would be tied into it. Now, I only have a couple ideas, but I do want to spend some time talking about the Marvel path that you could take, right? Because one aspect would be, all right, start coming up with Marvel things that would work. So, Fantastic Four, right? X-Men. Now, Amy Hennig's game could also be, one of them. We don't actually know, what she's doing. Although that seems like it'll probably be more main protagonist, maybe like an Iron Man or Ant-Man, etc. So there are properties, again, right? X-Men, Fantastic Four. I'm sure you could probably come up with like duos, like buddy systems, right? You could come up with something like that. But I want to talk about it more from the actual aspect of, okay, does it make sense for them to make 3 Marvel games? And this is something maybe controversially that I've been rather opposed to in my life or on my time on YouTube, where I don't prefer, and who am I? Really nothing, and that's kind of the point, right? It's just me discussing it. I wouldn't prefer Insomniac to be a Marvel studio. Yes, they're owned by PlayStation. Yes, they'd be PlayStation stuff. Now, actually, there's a couple different aspects with that too, right? Number one, if all they do is crank out Marvel games, which, let's be real, over the last little while, besides Ratchet & Clank, that is what they've done. And then you had Ratchet & Clank to kind of break it up. And I like that. I don't actually think there's anything wrong with that. So I would like that, please, going forward. But if you're only doing Marvel games, again, 2 different things. Number one, when I say wait, like, I don't want to say it. So it's probably it's not the right thing to say. Not a waste of talent, but a waste of, you could do other things that you're not doing. Does that make sense? Like, not to be mean or, upset with these people, because, again, I think they're actually one of the most talented groups in the entire industry. So I guess it's more like selfishness that, well, I would prefer you not do all of those things on all of your time, all of your resources to just do Marvel stuff. Other studios can do that. You can hand it out to non-Sony studios. You can hand it out to Sony studios, whatever you want. But to have an insanely talented group of teams, 3, working on just Marvel properties, again, wasteful, that kind of term, right? Maybe comes off the wrong way, but hopefully you guys get what I mean. I would prefer you do other things. So, and I guess, let me throw in this other app, because that was one way of thinking about it. The other way is from people who get mad, and I don't think it's all that wild that they do get mad, on, well, when you hand Insomniac these, Marvel IPs, they now become exclusive to PlayStation. Spider-Man has always been a very hot topic in the console war crowd, or in just a crowd in general, where, Spider-Man was basically taken. Spider-Man was taken from being multi-platform, yes, Sony and all that stuff, but multi-platform to just on PlayStation, right? Like it or hate it, that's what happened. Now you have Wolverine. That, I guess you technically have Miles, right? So you had Miles, now you have Wolverine. So the more you give them, if this multiplayer project is an X-Men game, an X-Men multiplayer, you can play as different members, all this stuff, you're going to have that too. Now, do they care if people are mad? Not necessarily. You could transform that anger into kind of strategy where it's like, well, hey, do you want to play an X-Men game? The only place you can play that is on PlayStation, so you need to get our console, right? I mean, there's a reason why it happens, from a Sony perspective. There's a smart strategic move, but from the general thing, like, the more you do this, the more you are making. And I by the way, I would say the exact same thing for Xbox, same thing for Nintendo. The more you do it, the more you're going to upset people, because you're taking more and more franchises. So that is not my primary argument, but that is definitely an argument I've seen. I honestly don't think it's all that crazy, because it To dismiss it is kind of unfair because a lot of people, I do believe, feel that way, right? So I don't want to like pretend it's nothing. It's not my primary argument. My primary argument would be why I don't want it to be a Marvel game is I just think you could do other things. So what other stuff you could do? Honestly, Resistance very much comes to mind. Now, making a Resistance-only multiplayer game seems pretty far out. I don't know if that would necessarily work. Resistance has always been a franchise that has not sold well. That's suffered really from people not buying it. It was amazing. It's one of my favorite franchises ever. The multiplayer was incredibly good. So would I want it to be a Resistance multiplayer? Yes. Again, for Marvel, if you're going to come up with theories of what it is, X-Men, Fantastic Four, those make sense. Another option, and this actually popped into my head as I'm talking, so I'm glad I did this, Sunset Overdrive. Now, hear me out. If you did a Sunset Overdrive multiplayer game, you'd basically be hopefully we all know what Sunset Overdrive is. Sunset Overdrive is now back in their realm. They can do whatever they want with it. I would not be shocked at all if there's a remaster in the future. And I believe, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, Spider-Man took a lot of, that was their, they made Sunset Overdrive, they made Spider-Man. They took a lot of inspiration. I don't think they actually would make Spider-Man if it wasn't for Sunset Overdrive. So I guess following me through, if you could make this destructive open world, I keep wanting to like compare it to like other games, but it is its own game, so it garners that respect, I should say. If you can do that and have that thing that Spider-Man was basically birthed from, and you can do it as a co-op game, like a Gotham Knights-like thing, let's say, where you could play it on your own. Yeah, well, okay, I don't want to go too far, because if I say, certain things could maybe break it. If we're talking, like, literally it's only online, are we talking, like, an MMO? Like, what exact? So, I don't know if I would go so far as to say Gotham Knights, because Gotham Knights is very much, well, it is a single-player thing, but there's multiplayer built in. That could be what they're talking about, or what they're referencing of when they're talking about that third game. So I don't want to dismiss it, but we just don't know. I think that one would work. If you did a Sunset Overdrive map, like an open world, you went around, you did quests with people, you destroyed things, you fought some stuff together, stuff like that. I really think that would be fine. So it does depend on, again, are we talking pure multiplayer? Are we talking their version of Avengers, their version of Suicide Squad, their version of DC Universe Online? The thing is, well, actually, we know this is confirmed. The team that made and is making DC Universe Online is making a Marvel equivalent. So to argue that, and Insomniac, I don't think is the right team to literally build an MMO. Okay, that's not their specialty. So, I think a pure multiplayer, maybe a small, like a little, like the third game being not as big, a pure multiplayer game of like a Resistance would be kind of a dream. It would kind of be perfect. It's also the most unlikely, in my opinion. It's the most unlikely to actually happen because it makes sense, but it also doesn't make sense, if that makes sense to you guys. I think something kind of like a Gotham Knights, but in their own way, or a Suicide Squad, or a Marvel's Avengers in their own style, not necessarily live service, by the way, just, whatever their version is, that would be pretty cool. And again, I'd prefer it not be Marvel. Here's a wild idea. Come up with a new IP. And I'm not saying that as in they don't have the talent to come up with things on the because they've created, Ratchet and Clank and stuff like that, and created Resistance, Sunset Overdrive, so clearly they can do it. If you're taking from those, or a Spider-Man, maybe it's a Spider, but again, that's Marvel, so it's actually kind of weird, right? You could take from those, but those are all established things. You could make a multiplayer game from scratch, like a franchise you've never made before, and then obviously you're just going based off the talent that they have, right? In terms of, well, do you trust them to do that? Well, do you do you trust how good they've been in the past? Because you'd have nothing else to go off of. You'd have no franchise to lean into, right? So that's my thoughts. I don't necessarily know what it is. I'm sure we will find out probably within the next year and a half. But let me know what you guys think it is in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on so you know when all these videos go up. If you want to follow me anywhere else, all my social media is in the description below. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you all on the next video.